Hey, everybody, and welcome to How to Make Films and Influence People with Peter and Andrew, where we talk about our own approach to screenwriting and filmmaking. We discuss great works of cinema and blasphemously imagine how they could be remade. This week, we'll be talking about Do the Right Thing, giving an update on our current screenplay project that you, the audience, have been contributing to. But first of all, I'm Peter, successful filmmaker, film professor, and screenwriter. This is Andrew.
Screenwriter, filmmaker, but not a pizzeria owner by choice.
All right, we wanted to update everyone on our screenplay project, and I think we've been a little busy. You were in LA for some meetings. We're doing some different things, but I think the project keeps moving forward. We're optimistic about it really turning into a great film. And I think one thing that I think we've mentioned before, but an important part of this script is it's something that we've written that we like the idea of it. We're having fun with it, but it is also something that is very producible. Whether or not we end up producing it ourselves or we work with selling it or working with other more of like an independent type producer, that's something that we had in mind the whole time was, can this be done on a small scale? And I think that that's something that is valuable to think about when you're writing a screenplay. Not that you can't write giant big scripts, but that something that we were thinking about was, if push came to shove, could we make this ourselves? And if push doesn't come to shove, if shove comes to push, whichever directions the shoves and pushes are going, would this be interesting to a producer with some money, some wherewithal, but not a major studio? And I think that was something that we were really intentional about with this project. So I'm excited as we develop it, see how that all comes together.
Yeah, I think the being intentional about having it be something that we could make if we wanted to. That makes it's a whole. I feel like the way you think about the movies is very different because at the end of the day, you could, if you wanted to, instead of writing the next Star Wars movie, which we could do and do really well, we are
Oh
instead
yeah.
spending our time on this movie that we have a lot better chance of making without anybody else's help necessarily.
Yeah, and I think that's something, as a screenwriter, a lot of what you end up doing is writing something and hoping to hoping to sell it, although like selling scripts is much less common than people really think of it's more like films get made on an independent level, or you use a script as a writing sample. It's a lot of people have this very simplistic view of like, you write a script and then you try to sell it, and that's not exactly how the industry works, generally speaking, or it doesn't work that way as much as people think it does. But
Hmm.
I think a big part of being a screenwriter is that you're writing something, and whether it is a script that you never are able to do anything with, whether it's a script that you are able to sell, somebody options it and then produces it, you're not going to be involved in actually making it. And often those things fall apart, even if people started it with the best of intention. And a lot of times what happens with a screenplay is that it's used as a writing sample to get you other work, but not that that script will actually be turned into a movie. These are all different things that happen in the film industry, but having a script that is at a scale that you could make it, I think is really freeing, because then it becomes a decision about whether it's worth our time and our money, our investment to actually make this as a movie. Whereas a lot of other kinds of stories, you could never make it without a bigger studio involvement. And so I like having that optionality. All right, we have a quick question this week from a listener. This is coming in from Jane. And Jane asks, do you guys have a favorite genre to write in? Do you have a favorite genre that you like watching in movies? And is that different? I
I've,
think that's an interesting question. Think about genre. Is there a disconnect between what you enjoy writing, what you enjoy watching? How would you answer that, Andrew?
I have found that I really enjoy writing movies that have at least some element of comedy to it, and usually like a lot more lighthearted, comedic type movies. But if you were to ask me my favorite movies, they're not going to be comedies. So I do think that there is a gap there where maybe it's like what you see in a movie and you're like, wow, that's so impressive. I could never do that. And so maybe there's an element of like the fact that you can't figure out how that's made that just really impresses you and you're like, that's incredible. I really like that. Versus like a comedy, I'm like, whenever I watch one, I just think, how could I have done that? Like, why did that land there, and how do they set this up? And it's much more of a, I'm thinking about how it's made rather than just being immersed in the experience, even though I do love comedies as well. So I think maybe that's it. Maybe I my favorite all-time movies, there's some comedies for sure, but most of it is going to be these big action movies or a little more drama, a little more intense movies that are maybe more thriller than a comedy, which I do like writing comedy. What do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I mean, I like all sorts of I like a good comedy.
Mhm.
I like an I like a thriller, a good drama. But I guess it's funny because I think that I enjoy writing funny dialogue, funny scenes, and so in that sense I really like writing comedy. Um and I like outlining a more action or more sort of dramatic kind of story. The Sometimes I find that actually writing out okay, if you write out a fight sequence or you write out a
Yeah.
you know I just don't think that writing out all the description of There Will Be Blood would be that fun for me, even
Mhm.
though I love the movie. And I think making the film would be really interesting, but that kind of description of very visual, long sort of taking in the world, that's a little less fun for me than writing funny dialogue. Um, so it's but there's a lot of satisfaction in good storytelling. So it's a tricky
Yeah.
question. I do think
When you
that
think about
whatever
it.
you're writing, it's good to find something that you enjoy about it. The times that I've been unhappiest writing something is
Mhm.
when I got hired to or asked to write something where I, I just kept thinking, this is not what I want to be writing. And that's just not a great recipe for success and not a great recipe for having a good time with it. I think finding things that you enjoy about it, even if it's not your favorite kind of movie, is important.
Yeah, because the writing process is different from the directing, the filmmaking. Like, there's so many steps in a movie that the writing part of it is just one of the many steps. And if you don't enjoy that step of it, it may never get down the road to something else, or it may. But if you just like the making part of it and you just take any script you like, that's different as well. And you may find you like directing certain types of movies better than writing certain types of movies. But I think there's something fun about writing fun things, and writing something
Yeah.
boring just seems more boring. I don't know. So yeah.
Yeah, I think if someone is paying you to write something and they just need the pages, or if you're pounding out, you're writing a soap opera, you're writing something where like they just need a lot of content for it, then you deliver what you need to deliver. But I think if you're writing something and hoping that people are impressed with it, you're trying to win people over with the quality of your writing. It's going to be really
Hmm.
hard to do that if you aren't interested in it. And just thinking like,
Yeah.
oh, I think this kind of film is what people want to read. If it's not what you're interested in, or if you can't find a way into being interested in it, I think it's going to be hard to find that be hard to execute in a really good way.
Yeah, and there's lots of filmmakers who's start writing a certain way. I'm thinking of like Jordan Peele, who had his sketch comedy show, and then ends up writing these amazing horror movies. And it's like, you don't have to be tied to one genre when you're writing, even though you start that way. It seems like the skill of being able to write a story in any way is what's valuable. Um, and maybe you find you over time that changes over time. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for the question. I think that's a good one, and I think it's some good thoughts to think about. So thank you. Keep the questions coming in. Keep the reviews coming in. We, share the podcast with a friend. We love to find find listeners wherever we can. We're available in all sorts of different avenues. So please check us out and recommend us to friends.
What have you been watching? What have you been watching? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you form opinions about the people who made it?
All right. And so now, Andrew, what have you been watching?
This week, I finally caught up on a movie I've been meaning to watch for a while now, called Sinners. And I don't think we've talked about this movie on the podcast yet. But so this movie is nominated for a bunch of Academy Awards right now. It's a very well made movie. Ryan Coogler, great director. I feel like the acting in this was really incredible. I knew going into it that there was some bit of zombie, action to it,
Mhm.
but I remember that first half of this movie. I feel like this movie to me at the end was like that just feels like two separate movies that I just couldn't like bridge the gap between them. It just felt so the first half to the second half felt very different to me. That first half felt like it was building up all these great stories with these really interesting characters, and you had this great music sequence in the middle that people have talked about, and then this whole zombie thing comes in, and it just kind of the movie for me kind of fell apart a little bit at the end there with my interest level in it. It felt like a lot of exposition, explaining things, re-explaining things, trying to explain this world when they set up something different. So I don't know. I didn't love it. I felt like it was really, really well made, and there are aspects of it I really enjoyed. But as a whole, I don't know. It just didn't land for me like I thought it would going in. You've seen this one, right?
I've seen it. Yeah, I liked it. I liked it. It's an interesting what you say. I mean, I think it. I guess I had a more positive take on it, but I do think it's a balancing act when you have how do you not just fall into being sort of a zombie, fighting off the zombie
Right.
fest, where, and a lot of the movie is talking about sort of the, zombies as allegory and the,
Right.
the, how is zombie life compared to the restrictions of actual regular life and things like that. And I think those are some really interesting ideas. And then at a certain point, you just got to have a lot of fighting. And I think I mean, I guess I wouldn't say that it bothered me, but I could see that it's a tricky balancing act, and I could see like a
Yeah.
person like you're saying, feeling like it fell too far one way or the other.
Yeah. That's the thing going in. I knew there was some type of balancing to this. I think it worked for a lot of people. I mean, people love this one. But yeah, that I don't know. I just couldn't get my head around it that it didn't feel cohesive to me. Even though I thought both the first and the second half of this movie were fun and like really good movies to watch. They just didn't feel like a cohesive thing to me. So, I don't know, but I really enjoyed
I
watching
mean,
it
I do
overall.
think an interesting thing about Sinners, and we're going to be discussing Do the Right Thing, but it's you also aren't spending a lot of time with like the oppressive overclass. It's like everybody in the movie is kind of is kind of persecuted in one way or another, or has a hard life in one way or another. And so it's then it's another one of those stories about people, people fighting for the scraps at the bottom of society, people, pushing each other down instead of realizing problems with the overall society. And I think there's a level of just that desperation that is like the,
Right.
the idea that the movie like kind of suggests there's at least an argument to be made that being a zombie is better than being persecuted. It's like, oh, okay, well, it's an interesting point you're making
Yeah.
there.
That is a good like that idea is just that's an interesting thing to explore. Is it better to just be a zombie at this point? Like that's crazy to think about. But yeah, they do explore that pretty well.
We're all equal over here. We're all equal zombies, but we are all
If you're a
equal. It's
zombie, there's no race in Zombieland. We're all
yeah,
zombies.
it's an interesting one. But I think that's also like just like the Michael B. Jordan character in Black Panther makes a lot of good points, even though he's ostensibly the bad guy. I think bringing up some of these when you have your antagonist make good points, I think that makes the movie a lot stronger.
Oh yeah. Like I feel like this movie could have just really fallen apart because it's so hard. I feel like what he did was so difficult to do. The balancing of these two stories, the allegories, the through line of this zombie compared to their life at the time. That if you didn't have somebody as competent doing that really could have fallen apart and not worked at all. So the fact that they made it this like it's it's a good movie as is. That's quite impressive for what they were trying to do. It just feels so big, to pull that off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Sinners, would you recommend it?
I think it's worth watching. Yeah, it's not. I don't. Not my favorite movie, but I'm not sad that I watched it. I think it was. It's just so different too. Like it's. I think it was well worth the watch.
It's an interesting one. I liked it. I would recommend it, and it is an interesting one. I kind of like the idea that it got so many Oscar nominations. Does it
Yeah,
have
that
the
is cool.
most in history? I think they
Was
added
this
a
the
new
one?
category this year, they but I think it might have the most of any movie ever, which is really
Oh, that's
interesting.
crazy. I mean, it's cool that a movie this unique got that because I feel like it is a pretty unique movie.
Yeah, yeah. I would it there's a lot of violent zombie stuff, so if that's not your bag, but I think it's a smart, maybe not a perfect movie, but I think it's a smart movie that's worth a watch if that's something you're interested in.
Yeah.
Uh I watched another movie. So I am I don't know if the listeners know, I don't know if I've mentioned this, but so I'm a film professor by choice, and I am currently teaching a class in a prison. I'm not currently in a prison, although like my
Looks
surroundings
like it.
in this space right now don't look so grand. But I am, among other classes. I This semester I'm teaching a class in a maximum security prison, and I won't get into too many details with that. But it's a really interesting experience, and it's me with a broken whiteboard talking about screenwriting with with a number of inmate students scattered around the room, and a guard in the corner with radio going off all the time. It's an interesting environment for learning. But we have been watching Die Hard, which which
In class.
in class, yeah, when
You
I
have
can
to watch
get a
it in
TV,
class.
because it's kind of hard to get a TV in there. I have to all the stars have to align to make that happen. But yeah, so we've been watching. I had to get all the films approved by the warden that I wanted to show in class, and then the class started, and I realized, it's hard to prepare for a class in prison when you've never taught that before. So
Yeah.
it's an interesting experience. But anyway, we've been watching Die Hard, and it's a fascinating. I mean, I chose the film because I think it's good, but just going through it beat by beat, it is such an excellent example of writing. I think
Mm.
um, it is. It's an action movie, and I think the Die Hard sequels do not do as good a job, but it just lays out everything. Like, we're gonna set up our main character, and here are his strengths, and here are his weaknesses, and here are the different elements that happen in the story, and we're going to have an antagonist. We're going to introduce him early, but then there's going to be a twist about who he is, and we're going to see new facets of his personality later on, like the famous scene where Hans Gruber meets John McClane and pretends to be an
Mhm.
American. It's a The film is just such a strong film. A different debate about whether it's a Christmas movie or not, but I would say Die Hard really is worth. I think it's a fun watch. I also think it is just every screenwriting student should watch Die Hard because it really just executes so well in terms of storytelling.
That's interesting to think about because I've seen that movie. I really enjoyed it, but I guess it didn't cross my mind that this is technically sound on every level. Like it's just so well written. But it kind of makes sense because this is just a genuinely beloved movie that when people watch it, you can't deny. I mean, I'm sure there's people who hate it, but there's so many people who just know this is the movie. I love this movie, and you can't convince me otherwise. And that, if you look at it through a different lens, through a screenwriting lens, through a filmmaking lens, that to see a movie stand up even after that close inspection, that really says something about it. It's not just a cheap action movie. Like there's more to it under the surface.
Yeah, and we might want to like check in more
Leave that one.
thoroughly with Die Hard in a future episode. So I won't jump the gun
Got to
in
put
that
on the
one, but
list.
I would say it's fun, and I would say it's one of those examples of the casual moviegoer might not be paying attention to all of these screenplay elements, all these story elements, but they're subtle. They're soaking them in. Like, it's
Yeah.
not just like, oh, you need to be a student to understand why this movie's good or to acknowledge that the movie's good. It's good because it works for a moviegoer. And I think those, whether you understand why it's working or not, isn't important to whether you like the film. And I think Die Hard really
Mhm.
delivers.
It just works. Yeah.
Die Hard 2, not a great movie, but I remember there's a whole thing. This was before the when like the original Star Wars trilogy had come out, obviously, but the
Hmm.
prequels had not come out yet. And in Die Hard 2, they constantly talk about the Annex Skywalk. I
Like, is
just
that a
remember like
reference?
being so, it's like
Are they
this,
trying to get
it's a
on them?
skywalk, like a hallway in the sky to the annex of the airport. But it just struck me as like such a weird thing, like an annex skywalk, when we have this other major famous character named Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah, that seems a little intentional. Although maybe not. I don't know. How
I
many of the
think
Die
it's
Hards
just
have you
a
seen?
I think it's a very bizarre coincidence because I don't think they really talked about Anakin Skywalker in the original Star Wars trilogy. I think we only really hear that
True.
name
I mean,
once the prequels
they knew
start.
the name. People knew. I don't know how they
Did
knew, but they
people
knew.
know?
Yeah, I can't remember. I have not seen all the Die Hards. Looking at this now, there's 5 of them. Have you seen all 5?
Uh I mean,
I'm
I've
trying to
seen
remember the difference between. I think I've seen at least 3. I
the
don't know.
first and the third I've seen. I saw the second once, and then I think I probably saw the fourth and the fifth when they came out, but I wasn't that impressed.
There was one where he jumps into a plane or something, or maybe a
The
helicopter.
fourth
I
and the
can't remember.
fifth just get silly. They just get
Yeah,
silly.
they got silly. I saw one of
Yeah.
those, I think. And that's what I think of when you're like, okay, this is kind of like a cheap action movie, not a lot going on underneath. It's just for the thrills.
Yep.
But the
But
first
that
one,
first one is
quality.
in a different category.
Yeah. Hey, we're big fans of Dunkin' and Bliss ice cream, and I think that should be pretty obvious by now.
But just because it's delicious, comes in many flavors, and can brighten up your day, that doesn't mean it will solve all of your life's problems.
We don't want to overstate things.
Is it delicious? Yes.
Is it nutritious? Well, as much as any ice cream, I guess.
Will it solve your long-standing feelings of inadequacy and tension within your family and an overwhelming sense of dread and despair about the state of the world? No. I think that's important to say. No, but it won't hurt.
So there you go. Dunkin' and Bliss. Won't solve all your problems, but it'll be delicious.
So let's get to our actual film of the week, and we're talking about Do the Right Thing. What can you tell us about that, Andrew?
Do the Right Thing, 1989, directed by Spike Lee, written by Spike Lee as well, starring him as well. Sal is the Italian owner of a pizzeria in Brooklyn. A neighborhood local, bugging out, becomes upset when he sees that the pizzeria's wall of fame exhibits only Italian actors. Bugging out believes a pizzeria in a black neighborhood should showcase black actors, but Sal disagrees. The wall becomes a symbol of racism and hate to Bugging out and to other people in the neighborhood, and tensions rise. And this takes place during a hot summer day. I think the tension level is high when it starts. The temperature level is high when this starts. And as this movie goes, you kind of start off with a lot of just setting up all of these different characters in this neighborhood, all of which seem very interesting characters, very well developed characters that you want to spend time with. And it turns into this story that is very much about race and prejudice and getting along, and these big ideas of love and hate are present. And going into this movie, having never seen it before, I knew kind of the topic, what it was vaguely about, and I kind of expected this to be, kind of hit you over the head a little bit at some point. But I found this movie to be very, I guess, subtle in a certain way. It doesn't seem like it's preachy at all. And I thought that was really interesting, kind of impressive that you could do a whole movie about these really deep topics, these really ingrained in society, kind of touchy subjects. And at the end of it, I didn't feel like at any moment did it come across as preachy in any way. Was that your experience with this as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just really smart filmmaking really it's looking at the nuance and the different layers of complexity going on in this neighborhood. And I think that's what really stood out. I When I think of like some other films from that era, like Boys in the Hood, or Menace to Society, where it's a lot more like, we're looking at Friday, but just sort of like we're looking at like, African American experience, but like we're not really trying to answer or probe like deep questions about like society so much as we're just trying to get a glimpse on one aspect of society. And I think those are good films, but I think Spike Lee is really trying to like investigate what's going on in society, and I think he's doing that in a really smart way, where it's like having Sal and the pizzeria be such a prominent part of the story. I think is
Hmm.
really important to like the complexity. Like the police end up playing a major role in the story, especially later on, but the police are coming in from outside the neighborhood basically. Sal
Right.
and his sons working at the pizzeria are part of the neighborhood. And so a real question like throughout the movie is like, whose neighborhood is it? Who gets to belong in the neighborhood? What right do you have? What obligation do you have? And like, how does everybody just get along? And then the police come in, and everything goes downhill from there. But it's an interesting, I just think it's a very smart look at very challenging questions, and not trying to say that there's a simple answer to them.
Right. It's almost like he's very good at posing questions without giving you an answer. Because at no point does he say, or do you really get the impression that this is the person that we're supposed to follow? Like this is the hero of the story. When the movie's called Do the Right Thing, at the end of the movie, you're kind of like, who did the right thing? Where was the example of the right thing? And you can find examples of right things, I think, but a lot of this also is just your interpretation. At the end of the film, you can interpret that in a many number of ways. How this should play out, who's at fault, who's not at fault, what the real message is here. And I think that on its own is quite impressive to do. That he doesn't really force anything on you. It's all just a matter of exploring these themes and concepts and ideas and just letting you sit with it to where you at the end just have to think for yourself like, wow, I need to consider this.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you were reading the synopsis about it. I wouldn't have even necessarily thought of like that as like I wouldn't have thought
It's
of
not
like,
just
oh, the whole movie revolves around bugging out, being upset about the pictures on the wall. Like, yeah, that is a big part of the movie, and that is sort of the catalyst that leads to the big action at the end. But the movie is also just, it's about a day in the life of this neighborhood and
hmm.
all these different storylines going. And to some extent, I think it's interesting. Spike Lee, I don't think appears in very many of his own movies, but it seems like his character Mookie is kind of like not the protagonist of the story. I don't know if there is a clear protagonist of the story,
Right. I don't
but
know
he
about that.
seems like sort of the audience, the audience proxy here, where it's like, the surrogate for the audience, where he's kind of
Yeah.
like going between worlds. He's black, but he works at the pizzeria. He's a pretty easygoing guy, but he's not just a passive character either. And so it seems like he's a little bit our lens into the world.
And he's got that girlfriend who is Hispanic or whose family is Hispanic and they speak Spanish as well. And so you have him like entering these different, because in this community you have black, white, you have the Korean family and some Hispanic families, and it seems like there's Jamaicans, but they're also black. I don't know where everybody's from, but there seems to be a sense of like this was one community and then people have moved in, and so you have these issues around whose it is now and how do they get all get along. And Mookie is this guy who just, you can see him, like I think the delivering the pizza is a great choice for his character to just, he has a reason to walk through the neighborhood, go to someone specific, come back somewhere else. And so he's always this in between going. And as he moves, you get a different sense of the community and you get to see like a day in the life of just through a delivery, not even a drive. He does not drive it anywhere. He's just walking with pizzas around. And I think that was a really good choice for the script as like a really natural way to experience all of this in one day. You know, it's a 2 hour movie, but it takes place in the morning and it ends at night. And that's basically the whole movie takes place in this one or two streets only. And yet you get really rich details about this community and what it's like living there.
Yeah. So, in this story, they set up right from the beginning that it's very hot, and people we see like the nature of the community is that people spend a lot of time outside. It's not like they're in suburban air conditioned homes. They're like
Mhm.
outside on the stoop, on the street, in their apartments, but their apartments are hot. And like it seems like the heat is a big part of this. But it almost made me think structurally, like an interesting part of the an interesting aspect of the movie is that it has this eruption at the end, and up until then it's not quite clear what the movie is even about. And I
Yeah,
think once you know what happens, it then informs how you look at what happened before. And I think all of these different events leading up to that, both in terms of all of these events that happened today, were part of leading into this death and riot and everything that happens at the end of the movie. But also, all of these things could have just ended in a very normal day. And
right,
like each one of these moments didn't need inevitably to lead to death and riot. And I think that's a really interesting part of the movie. But it's also just structurally interesting that you don't know what's coming as you're watching the movie. And it's almost like a volcano movie where you aren't aware that there's a volcano in the town
yeah.
until the end of the movie.
There's a lot of buildup in this, and you do, I think, from the beginning, you feel like he's building to something, but it's very hard to put your finger on what it is exactly. Because, like you said, this, I'm sure these same things have happened hundreds of times before, and it just ended a normal day. But for whatever reason, today was the last straw for a lot of these things. Today was the day that it just took a step too far, because it feels like with the temperature and the tensions and the emotions, it's like that, it's like right at 99 degrees, and then when it hits 100 it's going to explode, and you've just been right below it for so long that it's almost inevitable that at some point it's going to burst. But it just so happens to be today is the day that it bursts, and that's why you're hit in on this. But you just don't know that going in until the end. You can kind of see all the steps it took to get there.
Yeah, and one thing that I just like find so troubling in life is just thinking about things that just did not need to happen. And when you think about your own
Mhm.
life, things in my own life, things talking to some of my prisoner students that just like talk to all sorts of experiences, but where it's like it's one thing if you were sort of like you were on a path, this was always going to happen, you were doing lots of things like this, and then one time it goes worse than another time. There are things like that in life, and then there's some things where it's like, you know oh, if the cop had just let go a little sooner,
Yeah.
everything could have been different. Or if you just didn't say one word, if Sal, I don't know. I mean, by the time that everyone's fighting in the pizzeria, maybe things have gone too far already. But like Sal, who has been a pretty sympathetic guy, then start using the N word, I feel like is not helpful. And
Yeah.
it's like he's like been
He's
pretty
yeah.
sympathetic. I don't think that like that alone like changes everything, but it is just like, oh, this didn't need to happen. Like all
Yeah.
of these little there you have all this tinder built up for the fire, but you didn't need to light that spark. It didn't need to
Mhm.
happen, and then it just did, and now there's no taking it back.
Well, I think there's an interesting element of that too, of this idea that there's all this tinder everywhere, and everybody plays a part in this. But it, like, with a cop, if you let go a second sooner and the guy doesn't die, but maybe he doesn't die today, but it does feel like that cop at some point is going to cross the line, and it feels like at some point Sal is going to lose it. At some point, he's just going to lay into these people with some racial slurs. At some point, somebody's going to throw a trash can through the pizzeria window. Like it seems like all these things are going to happen at some point, it just didn't have to happen today. I don't know. There's something about it that it seems almost inevitable and also very preventable at the same time. And I think that that feeling kind of permeates this movie where you know it's going to end bad. You know it doesn't have to end bad, but you also know it kind of does. There's just no other way out of this. It's like this hopeless feeling in a way of just there's nothing anybody can do about it, and everybody's got their own reasons, everybody's got their own motives, everybody has a perspective that makes sense to them from their community. It's almost like they can't help being who they are. They're just the result of their upbringing, of where they were raised and born and raised in their neighborhoods and where they come from. And there's just nothing anybody can do about it. It all seems kind of this inevitability of it all and this hopeless feeling of it all. But also at the same time, you do one thing different, everything changes. So it's a very weird, I don't know, that balance of those two things at the same time
Yeah,
with this
and I
movie.
mean, I guess it's also part of what the movie's saying is that, and I think the heat is a big part of it, and the fact that everybody is on edge, and like all
Yeah.
these little things that could have been forgiven on another day aren't forgiven today, and it just comes to a boil. And I guess part of it is like both. And the movie ends with a quote from Martin Luther King and a quote from Malcolm X
Yeah.
about violence and its merits
Nonviolence.
or the problems with violence. And I think the duality of that is part of what the movie's about, because the idea that you're going to destroy the neighborhood and people, at least one person dies, all from a fight over a stereo or over a fight on the how you decorate a pizzeria wall. It just
Yeah.
seems so absurd. But I think part of that point is that when you have all this tinder there, when you have that, like, all this tension, the actual catalyst that sets it over, it could very well be a little thing.
Hmm.
It's not the and I think the death of Raheem is not a little thing. And I think that leading to rioting is not, that makes sense within the context of the story. But I think the idea that his death needed to stem out of a fight over the stereo or over
Yeah.
the pictures on the wall, it's just crazy. But I think it's saying when you have that level of tension at any point, any little thing could tip it over.
It's kind of like trying to figure out what was the start of World War II. And you can go down this list of like all these different things that had to happen for World War II. And at some point, somebody just does one thing that crosses the line, and then it just all explodes and it's over and there's no stopping it, you know? And like it seems like that way with a lot of these big events, and and something that I feel is applicable to the past, it's applicable to now. Like these same things are happening again and again. There's this cycle that this movie seems to portray really well in this very specific neighborhood, but that also applies to the world as a whole, even today, in so many different situations. It's all these misunderstandings, all these people that just can't quite get along, get on the same page. And then it just leads to something bigger down the road, even though it was just a bunch of little things at the beginning. So I think the way that he does that and portrays that, so by the end of the movie, you as the audience member feel like, yeah, like it all made sense how they got there. But you didn't have to get there. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'd say Germany invading Poland was a pretty big, clear, like,
I know
step
what point of that
towards.
is that like the cop killing somebody? Is that where we're at in the story? I guess we
I
could
mean,
go.
I guess I'd use World War One as more of an example of, like, all these countries ready to blow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'd say Hitler was pretty much the bad guy of World War Two, but
That's true. There's not really like a. I guess other than the cop that kills the guy, there's no clear villain in
no,
this movie.
and I think it's really important that the cop. I mean, I think it's both. Getting getting away from the Hitler analogy or whatever, but I think that, like, the cop, the cop comes in, and I think partly that's saying, I think it's a commentary on police and the idea of, like, police coming in, the power of the state being a bigger, just coming in with overwhelming force when, like, it was a neighborhood struggling, and now you're coming in with so much force that the whole game has changed. I think there's
Hmm.
a little bit of a commentary on that. I think commentary on the idea of, like, police coming in. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion over the years, and pluses and minuses, push and pull, about how much should police be integrated into a community because then like they know the people and the people know them, or does that cause more trouble because then the police are just getting into everyone's business? I don't know. That's a whole another discussion about policing, but I think in this film we definitely see the police come in. They don't know the people involved. They're not really integrated into the community. They're coming in
Mhm.
and they're trying to resolve everything quickly and just make it so much worse. And I think that's partially a commentary on the police, but I think there's also like if you had anyone in the community be the clear bad guy, and if you had anyone like who we know as a character be the clear bad guy, it would be a very different story. And I think part of
Yep.
what Spike Lee is saying is that like yeah, our life would be so much simpler if there was one clear bad guy and all we had to do was like stop that
Defeat
bad
that guy.
guy. But
Mhm.
it really is all these different levels of tension going on that are the problem.
And that's why it still feels applicable today. Because even though I think definitely race and everything has changed over time. This movie's 30 years old at this point, and things have changed. I don't think things have been solved. It's not like we've just gotten rid of this issue, but these issues still arise, and this idea of there's not just one person to blame here. There's sense of like we're all to blame. Everybody has a little role. Everybody's a little prejudiced against somebody else in some way. And like there's the scene where the cops drive by and there's the three guys sitting on the chairs and they're staring at each other and they both say the same thing of like, I don't know, waste of space or something. And you get
Mm-hmm.
the sense of like they both hate each other.
Mm-hmm.
And like they can't relate to each other. There's no basis for understanding there. And it seems like that's the real issue be for all of this to happen. You have this like there's just no love and understanding in these situations, and that's the bad guy in the movie. That's the villain, is that.
Yeah. There's one moment as the fight starts in the pizzeria. They shoot like there are different shots of different people, different characters in that scene. There's one shot of the John Turturro character who's the older son of Sal, and it looks to me like he looks like he's excited for the fight. Like it
Hmm.
seems like most people are kind of shocked, and it seems like he's like itching for a fight. And I'm not sure. I mean, Bugging Out comes in really aggressive, and Raheem seems a little. I mean, it seems like Bugging Out is really aggressive. John Turturro seems really aggressive and ready for a fight. Sal obviously just starts smashing the stereo, but it
Yeah.
seems like you also have part of this is like this is gonna boil over, and some people are itching for a fight, and it's not necessarily all on one side, but some people are itching for a fight and they will use this as an excuse to fight, and other people would really really prefer not to fight and don't want
Yep.
any of this to happen and get dragged into it anyway. And I think that is like both parts of that are true.
And that kind of is the message at the end with those two quotes. You have this Martin Luther King quote of, never use violence, that's not the way. And then you have Malcolm X who's like, well, in certain situations it's justified. And I think there's those two ideas, and in the movie you kind of see the like the promise of both of those ideas. And people who have those thoughts and they view the world that way and they're trying to live that way. But when you live in a world where everybody thinks their way is the right way, everybody's like, if you just did it my way, this would work out. And there's just so many issues with that it's a lot harder in practice than in theory. And there's just a lot of questions you have to ask yourself with how you're living your life.
Yeah. And I think, I think the John Turturro character is an interesting one, and I think it's interesting that Spike Lee gives so much time to that character. I mean, I think Spike Lee is just a really strong filmmaker, and he explores a lot of these themes. Like, I don't know if you've seen 25th Hour with Edward Norton, but it's an interesting one because there are a couple scenes in it that are almost exactly like in Do the Right Thing, where it's sort of people talking about their city and talking about their neighborhood. In 25th Hour, it's like one guy is preparing to turn himself into jail, and it's sort of like his last day as a free man. So it's a different plot, but some interesting like similar elements. But I think Spike Lee explores this. But him spending time with the John Turturro character and literally having his character Mookie talk to the John Turturro character about like how he feels about the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a part of it too that the like that character, the son of Sal, the pizzeria owner, like I think a lot of his frustration has nothing to do with race. It has to do with being the son of this of Sal and being like sort of stuck in this job and stuck in this family. But then that comes out in this way where he's then, you know, racist and coming after other people, and it's like everybody has their own, you know, everybody has great qualities, but also everybody has their own sort of challenges and their reasons for being angry with the world, and they might not have anything to do with the people that he's actually interacting with, but he's going to take it out on them.
Mhm. Yeah, that's what it seems like a lot in this movie is people are justifiably angry and upset, but they take it out on somebody else. And it just seems like it's this constant, like one more down the line. I'm upset of this thing, so I'm taking it out on this person. This person's upset I did that. They're going to take it out on somebody else. That person takes it out on somebody else. And it's this whole loop of just people taking out their anger onto people who don't deserve it. And yet at the same time, they have to release it. And so there's a lot of that buildup. And you get to see how every character kind of takes things out on somebody else in a certain way, or they snap at somebody else. And like there's nobody in this that doesn't snap at some point or doesn't get upset with somebody. It maybe I'm missing somebody, but it does seem like everybody's after somebody or taking out their aggression on somebody else. And that's kind of one of the main theme lines throughout this.
Yeah. So on a filmmaking screenwriting note, my point earlier about how it's kind of like a volcano movie where you're not really aware that there's a volcano in the town until the end. So
Mm-hmm.
do you think, I mean, I think the movie's very acclaimed. I think it, you know, it's well respected. I think it is a good movie. But I think that a lot of people, if they were approaching it, would say like, and if you didn't know that it was supposed to be a good movie,
Yeah.
like, would you say
Would you sit
that
through it?
too long, the movie just goes on too long with nothing happening? Or would you say that like all of these little interactions are engaging enough that it keeps your attention, you can feel the tension building, and you know that something's going to happen? I guess that's, I guess if I was writing this, I would be nervous that not enough was happening early on in the script.
Yes. I think that was my also, I would definitely wouldn't have written this way because I wouldn't have thought to be able to pull this off. But I think one thing that helps because it does take a long time to build to something where that third act, I guess you could call, the riot, the killing. There's a lot going on there, but up until that point, it's all these little things. It's like a slow burn. But I think what Spike Lee does really well here is this movie has so much style to it and the way that it's directed and like the editing, like you really get a sense of energy in the movie. I think the colors are bright, the people are saying interesting things in unique ways, and the way that the camera moves with people or throughout the community, and then it'll cut to somebody giving a monologue and it cuts back. Like I think all of that really helps this movie to where you can stay invested so long. I think if you had done this traditionally with somebody who didn't have Spike Lee's voice and perspective, I don't know that it would work as well. But I do think there's an element of just his filmmaking ability that really keeps you engaged when the story itself can be slow at times.
Yeah, I think it wins your confidence as a film. Like you're watching it right from the beginning. It seems like, oh, this isn't just another random, you know, indie film or something. There's something special. There, this
Yeah.
feels like a confident filmmaker. And if it he's seems like he must know what he's doing, and so I'll give it a little more time to work
Mhm.
out. I still wonder. I mean, I feel like a common thing that people would do is they would like The Hangover. Not that Do the Right Thing is the same movie as The Hangover, but you start The Hangover with like a suggestion of everything has gone wrong, and now we're going to flash back to see how it got to
Oh
there.
yeah. Start at the end.
Start at the
Yeah.
end or start 2/3 of the way through, and then we're
Mhm.
going to have to resolve things after that. And that's sort of what The Hangover does. A lot of movies, I think, would do that. And
Yeah.
I think that might be. I mean, I guess I would be worried. I would be nervous about writing the film this way because I would be nervous. Like, if I don't execute well enough and keep everyone's attention throughout, then I'm going to lose them before they get to the end. I think if you, I think he does make it work. And I think by doing that and having it just be a slow burn, it then is more of an emotional impact on the audience. It doesn't feel like just a narrative trick, like, oh, we were expecting this, and then you have to deliver. It's like, no, we were getting used to everybody. We didn't know for sure that something bad was going to happen, and then it did. And I think that is playing with the idea of nothing bad needed to happen. It didn't need to go this way. And I think if
Yeah.
the movie had started off with the aftermath of the riot, for instance, then we would have watched all the scenes in a different way.
And they would probably be forced to even if they didn't want to these days. I'm thinking of Sinners. Just we just talked about this. The movie starts off at the end with the
Mm-hmm.
kid walking with a broken guitar, blood bleeding and all this, and then it goes back. Like that idea is what you would typically do with this type of a movie to tell the audience, "Hey, we're building to something. So don't just give up on this like it's going somewhere." But Spike Lee was able to deliver without that, and I think it works. That's just a tough thing to do, but I think he
It's
pulled it off.
it's a tough thing to do, and I think that works as an independent filmmaker. And I don't know if maybe he's powerful enough that he could do that now. I think a lot of people would get pressured to do it differently. He's an
Yeah.
interesting filmmaker in his early days because he came up sort of at the same time as a lot of that wave of independent filmmakers, like Quentin Tarantino and Kevin Smith and Steven Soderbergh coming up in the late '80s, early '90s. Um, some of those more in the '90s, but like an interesting thing about Spike Lee was that he always said, like, he didn't take pride in having a low budget for his films. He said, I want to have a realistic budget. And I'm not sure exactly of the numbers, but it was like, Robert Rodriguez always bragged about having a $7,000 movie, and Kevin Smith made a $27,000 movie. And Spike Lee was like, my movie, the budget is $145,000. And, you know, and I think he was like, and not do the right thing. I think either She's Got to Have It or even an earlier film, but he was um, like, this is the whole budget. Now, technically, I'm only paying part of that in cash, and a lot of that is just people offering their services for free and working on my project. But those services have a value, and that value is
Right.
part of the budget of this film. And I'm not going to brag about doing it for cheap. I want to give credit to the people who volunteered their services for the film. And
That
and
makes
so
sense.
it's interesting when you just think about budget for movies that you know Robert Rodriguez might have only spent $7,000 in cash, but the things that he was getting for free are a lot
Yeah.
more than that. And it's interesting then that Spike Lee, as a point of pride or as a point of professionalism, wanted to be clear about everything that was going into making his movies and not just look what I did for no money.
Yeah, I mean, and this movie feels, at least this one, feels very rich with detail. And I'm assuming they filmed on an actual street in Brooklyn. I don't know, is this a set? Do you know? It feels like it's a very real street.
It was shot in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. Yeah,
Oh, like on location in Bedside.
yeah.
That's really cool, I think, that he was able to do that because it adds so much to it. And to get all those actors, like the camera movement just going up and down the street, you just feel like you really know the area so well. And I'm sure, I don't know how much he had to pay for that. There's some big name actors in this, a lot of actors that I don't think I don't know their names at this point, but I don't know how much he was able to do this movie for, but it seems like he did it his way. It does have the sense of like he made what he wanted to make, and I don't know even if he had more money, if there was something he wanted to do that he didn't do. It felt like a very like this was his style, his perspective, his view on this, and he did it how he wanted to do it.
Yeah, I mean, so I guess the budget was about $6 million, and it ended up grossing $37 million. So
Oh,
a commercial success, at least in those terms. But $6 million in 1989, not a super tiny indie. I mean, so he
no.
definitely had some money to make this, and I think you see that on the screen. Uh, But I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I think you see that there's so many actors, and I don't think they were big actors at the time. Like Martin Lawrence has a small role,
Right.
Rosie Perez has a small role, or relatively small role. Like so, there are a lot of. I mean,
Samuel L. Jackson's in this. He must have
yep.
been big at the time. I feel like I don't know.
No, I don't
This is
think so.
'89.
I
Was
think
he
that was
not?
early on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Maybe he
think
just
this was
got
a
all these
lot of
people
just
before
great
him.
actors being found early on in their career.
And if that's that's seems like the case, he obviously has an eye for talent, and he has an eye for style and directing. Like he knew what he needed to get this made, because you feel like everybody in this movie really does a good job with their characters. It doesn't seem like anybody's lacking, like there's anybody who throws the whole vibe of the movie off. It seems like everybody gets what this movie is and is on the same page with it, even though there's people playing so many different characters that are against each other. I feel like it'd be really hard to translate that vision to everybody, to get everybody on the same page for this.
Yeah, I think it's a really great film. It's yeah. Where would you come down in terms of recommending the film? How enjoyable is the film? Because I
I
think
would recommend it. Yeah,
yeah,
I thought it was really enjoyable. I think this style just in by itself, even without the messages on its own, the style is so unique to Spike Lee. It feels very much a movie from 1989. There's so much of culture at the time that you get through this. I would recommend this one, and it almost feels like at the end there's no way to avoid not thinking about things differently or considering somebody's perspective. Like when we talked about 12 Angry Men, at the end of that movie, you just have to consider things. It just makes you think about this topic in a way that you might not have recently, or might not have in this way. And so I think that is a good movie to watch, that everybody I would highly recommend watching this movie if you've never seen it.
yeah. I think, and I honestly think that you're better off. Well, I don't know. I think that if you could sit down in a movie theater and have no idea what was coming, that would be a great way to experience it, and then just be sort of heartbroken as things fall apart. But
Yeah.
I think knowing that it is going to end in a big way might be valuable in keeping your attention if you start to wonder if it's worth continuing with. I mean, I think it's really rich. I think for short attention span people in 2026, it doesn't give as much like immediate feedback of here's what the story's about, here's what the story's about.
Yeah.
And so
Hmm.
I think you need to sit with it a little bit, and you need to put in a little effort, but I think it really is rewarding if you do.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's a rewarding movie to watch. Like it does pay off in a way that's rewarding to you. You put the time and effort in, you're gonna get more than you put in back. And I think even on a second watch, because there's just so much going on in all of these scenes, knowing how it ends, you would still be able to see these interactions and how they're leading to this, and these little prejudices, these little slights, and just how they blow up to something bigger. That just the way it's all done, I think is really interesting to watch even on a second viewing.
How would you remake it if you had to? If the studios backed the truck up and paid you, what would you do?
All right, so if we were remaking this, which two white guys, I don't know that we should. I don't know that we should take on
Let's
this
check it
job
out
if the
right
studio
now.
backs the
We
truck up.
shouldn't do that.
I don't think we should. But just as a thought experiment, what if you were going to do this as a family film? How would you approach it?
So these themes, I thought about this. The themes you have in Disney movies, if Disney were to do something like this, I think they like a Zootopia type situation where you don't do people, you do animals, and you have the same kind of themes of people not getting along because they're from different places. There's this movie called Elemental they did recently, which is similar themes but at a much more kid-friendly level. So I was thinking maybe that, but that just seems so boring and it's been done. I was wondering if you could do this movie, and if you were to take a kid, keep the street, the neighborhood, the time, but you take there's that one kid who almost got hit by a car. If you had like a Korean kid, you had somebody from the Hispanic community kid, and then a white kid, all in this neighborhood doing their own thing and kind of interacting on the side with the adults and kind of showing what they've learned from their parents, and just kind of so there would be some prejudices these kids have just because their parents have them, and they would be showing them to each other. And by the end of the movie, there's maybe a little fight or kerfuffle that they have, and then they look and they see that the pizzeria is on fire and somebody's dead, and they're like, whoa. And there'd be this idea of these little things can lead to these big things, but avoiding all of the really harsh language and adult topics in this by focusing on the kids. I don't know. I think that that could be an interesting perspective on this and a way to do that. Yeah, what did you have?
Yeah, I mean, I guess a question is like, would it be totally selling out the film to have it have a happier ending? And
Yeah,
I think to some extent it would be, but if you're making it as a family film, I mean, I think if you did it like an animated film, but even if you did like human characters but an animated film, you just softened it a little bit. And I just think the pizzeria, you know, there's a there's a tension of who has the right to be here, and that people are just sort of intractable, and they just, this is going to come to a head and they're going to fight. But I do feel like in this moment, like, it's not that people are saying you don't have a right to have this pizzeria here, you need to leave. It's
yeah,
saying we want some more pictures on the wall that represent the community, and like the people who are coming to buy your pizza are black, we want some more black people on the wall. And I guess to me that says, like if bugging out was saying you need to leave, you're not welcome here, I feel like the story would be a little different. Because I feel like as it is,
yeah.
really, I feel like Sal should compromise. And I think that Sal is in the, it's his business, he can choose what he wants, but I
He's
feel
in their
like it
neighborhood.
seems like they're not asking that much, and it seems like a reasonable compromise to say that he should address the people who are actually coming to buy his pizza. And so I think if you had it have a little bit of a happier ending, and like
He comes around to it. Yeah,
and he comes around to it, I think that and you have a little bit of that discussion of like, we're not saying you need to leave. We're saying that like these are the people who are coming and like giving you business. This is the reason why your business is able to be here, is because we, the community, comes and buys your pizza, and we would like it if we're reflected on the walls. That seems like you could have that conversation and then have a little bit of a nice message at the end about the value of compromise. I mean, I think
yeah.
there's some situations where you might say there's no real compromise, and like you could imagine that there could be situations like that. But I feel like within the movie that Spike Lee has set up, there is an easy compromise that they could have come to.
Yeah, yeah. He could have, and he even says it himself that why don't we move back to our neighborhood? And he's like, well, there's tons of pizzerias there. This is the place where we can make money, and he's making money off these people. So there's an element of like, you're in this community, you're making money off them, just appeal to them in a way. So yeah, that could be an interesting happy ending ish.
A little bit of a happy ending, just
Yeah,
and I think also if you are targeting this to children, like I think you don't want to say that everything is simple, but I don't think it's a great message to send children that the either the correct answer or the inevitable answer is death and destruction and rioting. I think the idea that
yeah,
compromise, either if you're in the Sal position, you should be willing to compromise, or if you're in the bugging out position, you should be looking for compromise and not looking to tear down. I think that's a
Mhm.
good message to send kids. Whether or not it works out, I don't think we should assume I don't think we should tell children that you should assume that compromise will never work.
Yeah. Instead of it being more of like a realistically, this is how things happen, modeling the behavior you want that you think is appropriate or should happen in society.
Yeah.
That could work.
I guess that would be my take. What about no budget or bigger budget? This is sort of an interesting spot of a
In
budget,
between, huh?
as kind of a low budget, but not I mean, it's not a no budget movie by any means. So like, if you stripped it down even more, what would you do, or would you want to spend more money on it?
That's the thing with this movie. It does feel like it's in the perfect place with how much was spent and the the scope of it. Would you want to expand this beyond the two streets in the neighborhood? I feel like you lose the intimacy, the closeness of these people. But if you didn't have a street, if you were like, we got to confine this to one room, or just the pizzeria shop and people coming in and out. I think that's the way you could do it. You could make something work if you had like a radio there, people coming in and out. He leaves, but you don't follow him. You have a phone so you can talk to people. I think you could make something work there. I don't think it would be as good that way. I think you lose a lot if you don't have that street. The street that they're on just adds so much to it that I wouldn't want to lose that. But to make the budget smaller, I think you could do something just in the pizzeria.
Yeah, that was my thought too, to just stick in the pizzeria. And echoing your thoughts, I think a lot of the movie is about how the pizzeria fits into the neighborhood. And I think
Yeah.
if you set the whole thing in the pizzeria, it would center it even more. Like, I think it's now sort of a balancing act of the pizzeria, how does that fit into the neighborhood? If we made the whole thing the pizzeria, I feel like it would work better it would almost work better as like a claustrophobic contained thriller about what's going to happen to this pizzeria, as opposed to
Yeah.
like a slice of life in the neighborhood.
Yeah. I mean, you could do that, and it'd be a different movie though, for sure. You couldn't
I
keep the same.
don't think this would work with a giant budget set in space. I think you would. I think you would lose a lot if you. I don't think you want this to be a lot bigger. I think it's
Well,
about
even
as
if you
big as you
opened it
want it
up
to be.
to like all of Brooklyn and you're going to different neighborhoods within Brooklyn, I still think you lose a lot. It'd have to be a different story because the intimacy of this one street, I think that really makes the movie.
It is possible that Spike Lee did a better job with this than we would with that remake. So I think he might have been right. He might have been
You
right.
might have been right all along.
Uh, but now then our third option is TV show, either sort of an ongoing series or a Netflix 10-part. What would you do here?
I think the 10 part could work with this movie. You have the slow buildup of, but what you have like to set up is this really detailed, rich neighborhood, which I think would be interesting to have a show based around on this street, these little communities. I think you could do more with the other shops, with the radio, more backstory with these people. And I think it'd be interesting to lead to the same point and then have some aftermath too, like a few episodes after this all happens of how they rebuild, what happens next, where do they go from here, can they reconcile it all? And depending on how that goes, you could have a potential for more than one season of this. But I think just with these characters being so interesting and this neighborhood having so much going on, that I could see more, a longer story taking place here and seeing what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wonder how much is that final encounter between Sal and Raheem and bugging out, and then the police and the riot. Like, how much is that central to what the film is, and how much, if you did a series that was basically exploring just the ongoing vibe of the neighborhood, but also the tension of the neighborhood, and I think the movie does have a combination of, just funny little, or interesting little incidents happen, some romance here, some humor there, and little stories, but it all leads up to this one moment. I guess, like, I think you could just have a show that is just about the neighborhood and showing, like, so
Yeah.
the vibe of the neighborhood. I don't know if you would then say, like, that's missing the whole point of the movie. Like, is the whole point of the movie building up to that encounter, in which case
Mhm.
you need to have the show center around that, and then like a limited series leading up to that, I think, would be the way to do that. But if you said there's a value just exploring the ongoing tension in the neighborhood and the ongoing attempt of everybody to live and get along, but also try to do what they care about, like, if it doesn't need to lead to an explosion, but it's rather just every episode is just getting a sense for that community, I think that could go, for multiple seasons of just sort of being in this space.
Yeah. I think that could be an interesting way to do it as just this neighborhood. You might have to open up a little bit, but you have these people that move in. If you set this present day, I mean, that neighborhood in Brooklyn is not the same anymore. But you could get a neighborhood somewhere in New York City where you have all of these different communities interacting together.
Yeah.
And that could be, there's a lot you could do with that. That could be an interesting show where you don't answer questions. It's more of just exploring these ideas of little racisms here and prejudices there and how do they interact. And yeah, without it being preachy and over the top, I think that could work.
Yeah. So, one question would I've got a couple closing questions, but first question, would any of those be an improvement on the film?
No, I think this film is pretty perfect as is. It's very well done. I wouldn't change anything.
I agree. I agree. I think and it would be very very silly for us to say that we had a better version of it,
I got a
but I
better
also
idea.
genuinely don't think we do.
Yeah.
Um now second question, favorite Spike Lee film? Any like how does this rank up? Have you seen his other work?
I've seen a few of his other ones. I think this is my favorite now. I hadn't seen this one. I really like the style with this. The way that he did this, I just felt like it was so unique and so uniquely his voice and perspective. I really liked this one. This might be my favorite at the moment. What about you?
I mean, I think this one is I what I think is interesting is like 25th Hour and Inside Man. I mean, he also did Malcolm X, which is a huge movie. He,
That's yeah, that's true. That's also a really good
that's a
one.
good one. But Inside Man and 25th Hour, I think, are really interesting because they are ostensibly like genre films. Like 25th Hour is kind of a crime movie, and Inside Man is about a bank robbery, and yet they deal so much with race and identity, especially in New York City. And I
Hmm.
think that's really interesting. And I think Do the Right Thing is more just like that's 100% what it's about. Uh, and it's interesting to see those movies that are incorporating that into like a genre film. And so
Yeah,
it's an interesting like I think Inside Man I
it's
would
great.
recommend that to everybody because I think it works as a really fun bank heist movie. It's a smart bank heist movie, but it also has a lot of this insight into into race and identity. And so I think it's like it's almost like a Do the Right Thing, great movie. Maybe it feels like homework, but it pays off. And it doesn't need to feel like homework, but it feels like an important movie. Inside
Yeah,
Man, you think you're just watching a fun bank robbery movie, and it actually is sneaking in these
and it hits you
interesting
with that.
ideas.
That's a good point. Because like even if you were to watch Malcolm X, like you know what you're getting into with Malcolm X. You know what the
Yeah,
themes are going to be. And I will say he's very good at these themes of incorporating them into everything. But in this one, you know going in like this is the theme, and there's no hiding what this movie's about. We're not tricking you into anything else. So, but
yeah.
he does a lot really well. I mean, he can do anything.
Now I've got one more question. Okay, Do the Right Thing. I think we both agree. Great film. You should watch it. Should you model your screenwriting after it? Is it a good example of how to write a movie? Or is it is it working in a unique way that is probably not not the best way to model your writing after?
I think we've kind of hit on this a little bit. I do think it is unique to him. Like if he's the one writing, directing, starring in it, he's got the vision. I think that's why it works because it's all him. If you were to write this and pass it on to somebody else, there's so much going to get lost in translation. I don't know that you would want to necessarily do this. I mean, if you're making something yourself though, there's an element of like just do what you think is good.
Yeah.
And if it like stands out, like it does stand out. But no, I don't think this is traditionally. I I don't know. I haven't done enough. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that you just made two great points. I mean, I would definitely agree that I don't think that this is a great model for writing a screenplay that people are expecting to see. And if you're trying to just show that you're a pretty good writer, I don't think that this is a good model because it depends on it being done so well. And it's
Yeah.
not a good model. If you watch the movie Die Hard or you watch the movie The Italian Job, not a great Die Hard's good. The Italian Job, not a great movie. But if you follow that model, you'll have a pretty decent movie.
Yeah.
If you followed the model of Do the Right Thing and only did it halfway decent, it would maybe be nothing. And so I
Yeah.
think but at the same time, I think your point, like, if you're gonna make this yourself, be bold. Like
Yeah.
actually do something that nobody else would make. And I think there's something to that.
Yeah. I mean, he did it. I mean, this, clearly it worked, but it doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
So that's the lesson here. Do the right thing. Great movie. You couldn't do it. We
You could
couldn't
not
do
do
it. You can't do it. But Spike Lee
Yeah.
did. Check it out. Thanks for joining us for this episode of How to Make Films and Influence People. Check us out at howtomakefilmspodcast.com, and we'll see you next time.